a full-grown bobcat standing just 50 yards from an active runway. It didn't run away. It held its ground, forcing the plane to abort its landing and delaying commercial departures. The animal's bizarre refusal to leave baffled the control tower and delayed flights. As pilots aborted landings and flights stacked up on the tarmac, the wildcat stood her ground with desperate determination that defied every instinct of survival. She should have slipped into the nearby chaparral. For hours, flights remained delayed, passengers frustrated, and everyone wanted answers. But beneath the confusion and chaos, something far more urgent was unfolding. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Frank Johnson gripped the worn steering wheel of his Ford F-150 operations truck, the vinyl cool against his palms in the pre-dawn chill. At 62, Frank had seen just about everything Prescott Regional Airport had to offer. He'd seen summer monsoons turn the tarmac into a shallow lake inside of 10 minutes. He'd seen a microburst flip a parked Cessna like a child's toy. He'd seen coyotes, javelinas, and on one memorable Tuesday, a bewildered-looking antelope. But this morning was quiet. The sky over the Bradshaw Mountains was a pale, promising stripe of periwinkle, and the high desert air smelled of dust and creosote. Frank took a sip of lukewarm coffee from his battered silver thermos. It was the same thermos his wife, Eleanor, had bought him 20 years ago. She'd been gone for 3, but the thermos remained, a dented stainless steel repository of memory. "Morning, Frank." A voice crackled over the radio, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Sarah, up in the tower, her voice always a little too chipper for 5:30 a.m. "Morning, tower," Frank grunted, keying the mic. "Runway 3 right visual check, looks good, all clear." "Roger that, ops. We've got a private bird, a Cessna 421 on a 10-mile final. Commercial departures start in 40. "Copy, just making my perimeter run." Frank loved this part of the day. The airport was still asleep, a concrete giant waiting for the sun to wake it. His job was to check the fences, scan the runways for FOD, foreign object debris, and make sure the only things using the airfield were airplanes. He turned the truck onto taxiway Bravo, his amber beacons painting slow, lazy circles on the asphalt. And then he saw it. It wasn't a coyote, which would have been loping and gangly. It wasn't a fox, which would have been low and quick. This was elegant. It moved with a fluid, muscular grace, padding silently across the infield grass separating the taxiway from the main runway. It was tawny, spotted, and had a short, bobbed tail. "Well, I'll be," Frank whispered. He grabbed his binoculars from the dash. The cat stopped, lifting its head to sniff the air. It was a bobcat, a mature female, healthy and alert. She was beautiful, the absolute picture of the wild chaparral that surrounded them. And she was standing 50 yards from an active runway. Frank grabbed his radio. "Tower, operations." "Hold on, Sarah, I've got eyes on wildlife. Appears to be a bobcat, infield, moving parallel to 3 right. Sarah's voice lost its cheer immediately. "Confirm, Bobcat?" "Ops, that Cessna is on a 3-mile final. Can you clear the animal?" "Working on it," Frank said, his knuckles white on the wheel. This was the part of the job he hated. He hit a switch, and the truck's speakers erupted with a series of piercing shrieks and predatory bird calls. The official, pre-recorded wildlife hazing sounds. The bobcat's ears flattened. She crouched low, her amber eyes fixed on the truck. "Tower, she's not moving," Frank reported. "She's just staring at me." "She can't stay there, Frank." That Cessna is at 800 feet. I'm ordering a go-around. Stand by. Frank winced. A go-around was expensive, annoying, and it started a cascade of paperwork. He heard the whine of the Cessna's engines as the pilot aborted the landing, pouring on power to climb back into the sky. "Okay, Frank, he's clear, but you have to get her off that field," Sarah said, the stress sharp in her voice. "The first American Eagle flight is boarding." "I'm on it, Tower." Frank shifted the truck into drive and aimed it at the cat. He flipped on the air horn. Baronk! The sound shattered the morning peace. The Bobcat flinched, a violent shudder passing through her body. She sprinted, not toward the perimeter fence and the safety of the scrubland beyond, but along the runway, her paws throwing up little clouds of dust. "She's running south toward the end of the runway," Frank yelled into the mic, frustrated. "Come on, girl, wrong way." He sped up, keeping the truck between her and the runway. He blasted the horn again. The cat was fast, but she was in a panic. She looked left, then right, trapped between the noise and the vast open pavement. Frank felt a sharp pang of something. Guilt, maybe. She was terrified. He was terrorizing her. "Just go, honey, get out of here," he muttered, easing off the horn. As if she'd heard him, the Bobcat suddenly veered hard to the east. She shot past a blue taxiway sign and disappeared. Frank slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding slightly. Where'd she go? He pulled up to where he'd last seen her. Nothing. Just grass and a concrete headwall. Then he saw it. The dark, circular mouth of a 36-inch culvert pipe that ran under the taxiway and out past the perimeter fence. "Ah, hell," Frank sighed. He keyed the mic. "Tower operations. The animal is contained. She's gone into culvert pipe 7B, east side of the field." "Contained?" Sarah sounded skeptical. "Can you confirm she's exited the airfield?" "Negative. She's in the pipe, but she's off the runway. The area is clear." "Roger. Stand by." For the next 38 minutes, Frank's quiet morning turned into a bureaucratic headache. He had to perform a full FOD sweep of the runway, driving slowly, scanning for any pebble or scrap the cat might have dislodged. He found nothing. The tower issued a notum, a notice to airmen, warning all pilots of wildlife activity in the vicinity of Culvert 7B. 3 commercial flights were delayed on the ground, their passengers staring out the windows, wondering what the holdup was. Finally, at 6:15 a.m., normal operations resumed. The Cessna 421 landed safely, its pilot audibly grumpy over the radio. The American Eagle flight took off, roaring into the brightening sky. Frank parked his truck near the culvert and just sat for a moment, the engine ticking as it cooled. He looked at the dark, unassuming pipe. He'd done his job. The airport was safe. But he couldn't shake the image of the Bobcat's eyes, those wide, terrified amber eyes. And he couldn't shake the one nagging question. Why hadn't she run away? She had acres of open chaparral to her west, the direction she'd come from. Instead, she had run right at the noise, right at the danger, and dove into a dark concrete hole. It didn't make sense. "You're overthinking it, old man," he told himself, starting the truck. "It's just an animal." It panicked. He drove away, but the feeling that he'd missed something important settled in his gut like cold coffee. The day wore on. Frank dealt with a fuel spill on the GA ramp, replaced a burnt-out taxiway light, and filed 3 separate reports on the Bobcat incident. By 5 p.m., he was tired, his knees ached, and he was ready for a quiet evening with a microwave dinner and the baseball game. He was driving his personal car toward the exit when he passed the access road for the east perimeter. On impulse, he turned. He told himself it was just for assurance. A final check. Make sure the culvert was clear, that the cat hadn't come back out onto the field. But he knew, deep down, that wasn't it. He was haunted by that cat. He parked his truck 100 yards from Culvert 7B, in the same spot he'd been that morning. The sun was setting now, painting the high desert in glorious shades of orange and violet. The air was still. He got out and walked toward the pipe. It was just a black circle in a concrete wall, silent and unassuming. "All right, girl," he said softly to the empty air. "Show's over. You can go home." He stood there for a full minute, listening to the buzz of insects and the distant drone of a plane in the sky. He was about to turn and leave, feeling foolish, when he heard it. It was impossibly small. A faint, high-pitched peep. Frank froze. He strained his ears. A bird? A field mouse? He took a step closer to the culvert. And then he heard it again, clearer this time. Mew, mew, meow. It wasn't a peep. It was a cry. The sound hit Frank Johnson like a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. It was the unmistakable, desperate wail of a kitten. "Oh no," he whispered. He dropped to one knee, ignoring the protest from his joints, and leaned toward the dark opening. "Oh, you didn't." The smell of damp earth and animal fur wafted out, and the sound was plainer now. It wasn't one kitten. It was several, their tiny voices overlapping in a chorus of hunger and fear. That bobcat this morning, she wasn't running from the fence. She wasn't panicking. She was trying to get back to her babies. The den wasn't some distant hollow. The den was inside the culvert. Frank's hazing, the air horn, the terrifying truck. He hadn't just scared her off the runway. He had cut her off from her family. He had been guarding the pipe, and she had been forced to flee, leaving her kittens behind all day, trapped and starving. The refusal to leave that the pilots had complained about. It wasn't defiance. It was desperation. "Sarah," he said into his radio, his voice thick, "this is Frank. You need to call your boss. And then, I need you to get me the number for Arizona Game and Fish, fast. We have a situation at 7B, a big one." Within an hour, the area around Culvert 7B looked less like an airfield and more like a command center. Frank's boss, the airport manager, was there, looking pale. And next to Frank stood Dr. Eva Ramirez, a wildlife biologist from Arizona Game and Fish. Eva was all business, but with kind eyes. She had a long, fiber-optic camera, which she was now gently feeding into the dark pipe. She watched the monitor, her face serene. "Well, Frank," she said, not looking up, "your ears are right. And your hunch was too. Say hello to the family." She turned the monitor. Frank leaned in. There, in the grainy, green-tinted night vision, was a pile of spotted fur. 3 tiny bobcat kittens, no bigger than his hand, were huddled together on a dry patch of earth and grass, deep inside the pipe. They were blind, their eyes still sealed shut. Eva corrected herself. Not 6 weeks. Maybe 6 days. They are brand new. Frank's heart felt like it was breaking. "All day," he murmured. "They've been alone all day. Because of me." "Now stop that," Eva said gently, retracting the scope. You were doing your job, Frank. You were protecting human lives. That's the priority, and it's the right one. The mother chose a terrible spot for a den. A marvel of engineering, sure. It's dry, it's safe from coyotes, but awful neighbors. So what do we do? The airport manager asked, wringing his hands. We can't just leave them, but we can't have a Bobcat den on an active airfield. We absolutely cannot, Eva agreed, and we can't go in. If we put our scent on them or try to move them, the mother might reject them. Or worse, she'll try to fight us and she'll lose. So we're stuck, Frank said. No, Eva smiled. We're not. The mother is smart. She's been out there all day in the chaparral watching. I guarantee it. She's just waiting for the big metal monsters to leave. We're not going to haze her. We're going to help her. The new plan was the opposite of the morning's aggression. It was a plan of patience and trust. Following Eva's instructions, Frank and his team set up what she called a staging area. They found the other end of the culvert pipe, the one that exited safely into the scrubland outside the perimeter fence. Just beyond the opening, they placed a large, new plastic den box, lining it with dry grass. It's a hope box, Eva explained. We're giving her a safe, dark, quiet place to move to. They backed away, setting up a single battery-powered trail camera aimed at the culvert exit. Frank and Eva then drove back to his truck, parking it 200 yards away, lights off, engine off. And they waited. The sun was completely gone. The airfield was a sea of blue and white lights. But out here, there was only the sound of the crickets. She'll come, Eva said, her voice a comforting presence in the dark cab. How do you know? Frank asked. He was staring at the trail cam feed on his phone. A mother's instinct is the strongest force on this planet, Frank. It's stronger than concrete, stronger than fear. She knows where they are. She'll come. They sat in silence. Frank thought about Eleanor. She had been a volunteer at the local wildlife center. She'd had a way with broken things. Wounded birds, stray cats, grieving husbands. Everything just wants to be safe, Frank, she used to tell him, rubbing his shoulders after a long shift. Even you. He looked at the dark screen. She would have loved this, he said, his voice quiet. Your wife? Eva asked. Frank nodded. She always said I saw the airport as concrete and rules. She saw it as 300 acres of wild desert we just happened to build on. Guess she was right. She sounds like a very smart woman, Eva said. At 1846, 6:46 p.m., Frank's phone buzzed. Emotion alert. A shadow flickered across the screen. There, Frank whispered, sitting bolt upright. A shape emerged from the darkness. It was the mother Bobcat. She was low to the ground, cautious. She sniffed the air. She looked right at the camera, her eyes glowing like hot coals. She inspected the new den box Eva had set out, sniffing it inside and out. Then, satisfied, she turned and slipped like a ghost into the mouth of the culvert. She's in, Eva said. Frank fumbled for his radio. Tower, operations. This is Frank. We have movement. The mother is back. I need a full ground stop. Hold all surface movement. I mean everything. There was a pause. Frank could imagine Sarah, eyes wide, looking at the board. An unauthorized ground stop? On a Friday evening? Roger, ops, Sarah's voice came back, firm and clear. Holding all surface movement. The field is yours, Frank. Bring 'em home. Frank stared at his phone screen, his breath fogging the window. It felt like an eternity. Then, she reappeared. Clamped gently but firmly in her jaws was the first tiny spotted kitten. It dangled, limp and trusting. The mother moved with purpose. She carried her baby straight to the new den box, disappeared inside for a moment, and then re-emerged, alone. Without a second's hesitation, she bolted back into the culvert. "One," Frank breathed. 2 minutes later, she was back with the second kitten. Same routine. Straight to the box, tuck it in, back into the pipe. 2. Frank realized his cheeks were wet. He angrily wiped a tear from his eye, embarrassed. Eva, beside him, was smiling, but she never took her eyes off the feed. When the mother bobcat returned for the third and final kitten, she seemed to exhaust all her remaining patience. She sprinted from the pipe, deposited the last of her family, and then did something that made Frank's heart stop. She didn't just run off. She emerged from the den box and stood at the edge of the chaparral, just at the line where the wildland met the airport's neatly mown grass. She turned her head. She looked back, across the dark expanse, in the exact direction of Frank's hidden truck. She stood perfectly still for 3 long seconds. Frank felt it. A connection, an acknowledgement. It wasn't gratitude. It was dignity. It was a queen surveying her territory, her family safe, the crisis over. And then, as silently as she had arrived, she vanished into the brush. The entire operation had taken 12 minutes. Frank let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He picked up the radio. His voice was rough. "Tower. Ops. Wildlife is clear. All clear. The family is... They're safe. The airfield is yours." "Copy that, Ops," Sarah replied. And was it his imagination, or did her voice sound thick too? "Well done, Frank. Well done." That night, they performed another FOD check just to be sure. They reviewed the integrity of the fence and made plans to install a wildlife-proof grate over the culvert opening. The lesson learned memo for the staff would be about increasing dawn surveillance and maintaining contact with game and fish. But as Frank Johnson drove home, well after dark, he knew his own lesson was different. The airport wasn't just concrete and rules. Eleanor was right. It was alive. And tonight, he hadn't just been protecting the planes from the wildlife. He had been protecting the wildlife from the planes. He pulled into his empty driveway and cut the engine, sitting for a moment in the quiet. He looked at the old silver thermos on the passenger seat. "We did a good thing tonight, Elle," he whispered. And for the first time in a long time, the silence that answered him didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like peace.